Good morning, colleagues. We are starting the third and last day of our advisory board meeting, and we have a full agenda and only half day available to close as many items as possible for our agenda. Before looking on the program of today, I just want to agree with you on the time setting that we have an understanding in the room how much time we have available. In the agenda, if you look on the tentative timetable, we very close to the foreseen start at 9:30. The meeting should be closed by 1 o'clock. Is there anybody has an objection against closing at 1, or is there an idea of or do some people want to extend the meeting? Otherwise, we would try to, the chair and the vice chair would try to steer the meeting where we could close by 1 o'clock. An optional element inside the agenda of today is a coffee break, so we see how well we are able to move forward. If we maybe to close some items, maybe need to move in a different configuration to use the maximum of our time together and to be able to close this meeting by 1 o'clock. Do I have an agreement to proceed like this? And so looking on our agenda of today, or the expectations for our work today, we have three main items of substance for today. So we look back to the annual operating plan, where we had a discussion yesterday. We have the joint annual report, where we have a new text, and we have we also have a discussion on the program of work and how to proceed with this. If you agree, we would start with the annual operating plan for 2019, and building on the comments and the discussion yesterday, the Secretariat provided an updated version, and we would see, and I don't want to chase anybody in the Secretariat, but you hopefully have seen the text. I understand that not many of the time to read this in detail, so we would ask to get guided through. We would ask the Secretary to guide us through the changes in a quick readout. Based on this, we would maybe try to zoom in onto the textual proposals on the 2-3 critical paragraphs and see if we can get some consensus language around this so we can close this item. Okay, with this introduction, I would like to give the floor again to Manfredi to inform us about the text.
Good morning, colleagues. Thanks you very much, Mr. Vice Chair. Apologies, I didn't prepare a presentation for this updated version. We have tried to reflect the comments that we have received during the discussion. There is a combination of editorial changes and inclusion that we hope respond to your guidance. So in paragraph 2, we have included, as requested, the mission of the CTCN as indicated currently, and have made reference to both the nationally determined contribution and national adaptation plans to reflect this balanced work that we do between mitigation and adaptation and to the objectives of the Paris Agreement. And also we made reference to the second round of nationally determined contribution and long-term strategies that we are ready to assist the preparation of, would countries request us to do so, given the deadline for 2020. We have also included three main objectives three main priorities for 2019. Facilitate transformative intervention with the potential to produce quantitative impact and catalyze investment of climate technologies, building on activities that were already, on the previous successes with the financial mechanism, help countries implement their NDC through engagement with financial institutions and the private sector, and then strengthen the engagement of the network and the capacity of NDEs beyond the usual service provided. We have then specified in paragraph 5 what is the way we plan on engaging with the private sector and with a particular focus on SMEs. We have in paragraph 6, or the new paragraph 6, we have specified our effort for the monitoring and evaluation of the activities that the CTCN will perform. We have clarified in paragraph, in paragraph 8, what we mean by transparency of CTCN funding arrangements. That is basically what we had agreed in the advisory, in a couple of advisory board ago, to publish the funding agreements that with the different donors on the CTCN knowledge management system. We have clarified which case studies, which review we refer to when we speak that in line of the, that we have organized activities reacting to the recommendations that we have received. We have in paragraph 9 and through the document, we have changed the definition of regional approach, and we now speak of geographic distribution of the teams. And then, there is a bunch of additions on communication, and I guess that the other big change is in paragraph 3. We have combined, reduced, reduced, and by combining a number of the activities that we'll be performing, and we have clustered them along the 3 services that the COP has mandated us to perform. So technical assistance, strengthening network partnership and capacity building, and fostering collaboration through access of information. And then in the budget, in addition of adding the currency we are speaking of, we have also included an indication of how much resources we expect to be going to the fast technical assistance. That is approximately $500,000 for 2019. This should allow us to respond to the 20 to 25 FTAs as we have indicated in the outcome table. Yeah, I think these are the main changes, and obviously very happy to respond to any question and receive further guidance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Manfredi, for the introduction. And I also noted, in addition, that on the very last page, you gave an overview on GCF and Adaptation Fund and pro bono support.
Yeah, that was already there yesterday.
Okay.
So it's not changed.
Okay, with this update, I see one flag. Sumaya.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and good morning, everyone. I just raised two quick points, and these are of concern which I raised yesterday also. Point number 5, introduction. In the introduction is supposed to be giving the objective and a general direction. Point number 5 says all about de-risking private investment, making facilities for market entry of private. There was a point discussed yesterday that every kind of technology has an inherent risk, and some of these have comparatively higher risk. And I noticed that CTC is already venturing into areas which has higher risk, like waste to energy was mentioned, geothermal energy mentioned, and we know that there are areas where this has been done, where high risk have been experienced, and these have been abandoned. And many of the poorer countries, countries where this technical assistance are being given, might not have the capacity to, on their own, to assess all those risks. CTC is started facilitating Zambia's geothermal energy project. Is it informed that in Switzerland, the geothermal project in Basel had to be abandoned because of induced seismicity? In St. Gallen in Switzerland, it has to be abandoned. In US, in North California, in the St. Andreas Spring areas, induced seismicity of 4.3 has been experienced. Do the Zambian authorities or Zambian designated entity has the capacity to do seismic monitoring throughout, like the USGS does, or like the Swiss Seismic Survey Service does? So I think one very critical point that needs to be introduced in the objective is whenever we are venturing into technology assessment, technical assistance in terms of technology by third-party vendors, that's the majority. There has to be a technological risk assessment which must be included, number one, because this is, sorry to put it this way, seeing this, my impression is CTC was created for de-risking private investment, not de-risking the people who are supposed to be benefited from climate technologies. So that needs to come first. I'm not against private investment, but the de-risking of communities who are getting this, that must be getting higher priority, number one. Second, point number 11 in levels of engagement, where it is said that CTCN knowledge portal will maintain and update a set of information on technical assistance. And the addition, CTCN will support NDs by providing communication materials, etc., generate awareness of NDP's role and CTCN service and request. So here I will suggest that we also in the knowledge portal, the experiences from past technical assistances, including the unintended, I will not use the word negative, but unintended impacts should be clearly, if in a separate section, should be clearly mentioned, so that anyone who wants to take the similar kind of technical assistance in the similar technological area are at least aware of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. From the Secretary point of view, just a few notions on this. Definitely, we have to be very careful when we are supporting countries introducing new technologies. And in that work of technical assistance, we indeed have emphasized the kind of looking at all possible kind of risk. They are societal, they are cultural, and of course technical and environmental. We just wondered whether when this guidance is coming from the parties and relevant bodies to us in order that we could go ahead or forward with any mechanism. We noticed that on the discussions of technology framework, for example, there is a chapter of technical assistance. And indeed in that language which is now on the negotiations, there we talk about social appropriateness and cultural barriers to the implementation of technologies, and also identification of technologies that are ready to transfer. So in a way, we are still awaiting for maybe more guidance from the parties on that one. And then we don't have now the tech representative here, or we have at least a chairperson of the tech. But what I followed last week was that the tech actually is working on or considering to have the specific work program on emerging technologies. And there indeed, again, the issue of potential economic, environment and social impacts of technologies are coming up. So that is one place where we might get some more guidance from the Technology Executive Committee for our work. So I just wanted to give us a background on that, how much text we would put on now on the risk assessments here in the annual operating plan. But of course we will took a note on that, but maybe you could have a textual proposal, so one way. Go.
Before I give the floor back to Sumya, I saw Spencer asking for the floor.
Yeah, I just wanted to react to this proposal made here on 5, and maybe we might want to be less ambitious here. because there could be some form of liability to the CTCN on this issue. So I think we need to steer ourselves away from liabilities here and position yourself as a de-risking mechanism. I mean, can we be opening ourselves here for liabilities? So that was the question here. So maybe we want to soften that a little bit.
Thank you, Spencer. I have on my list now, and I hope I have the order right. Oli, you would be next, then I have Sumia, and then I would have Joseph as next speaker, and then we continue from there. Oli?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Just a small comment on the tables in the back. The new table on the very last page, I believe there might be an error, but please correct me if I'm wrong. I think that there's 300,000 missing from the grand total, so please correct me if I'm wrong, and if it is an error, completely understandable with the late night drafting. So I just wanted to point it out that the difference between the two tables should be 5 million, and it seems to be less, if I understand correctly. Thank you.
Thank you. Sumia, back to you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Let me clarify. What I'm requesting is not putting a mechanism right now, because the first section is basically objectives. The first section, introductory points. You have not committed to anything by putting your objectives or your intention to go. So the intention to go should clearly mention there should be a risk assessment of technologies that do not commit CTC to any liability. It's a risk assessment. Put it out in the public domain. Without that risk assessment, I'm repeating this, many countries which are receiving the assistance will not be in a position to even know. And I can go on and explain what are the risks that has been faced by communities and large areas due to misdirected, maladjusted technologies. But let's put it as just as an objective.
Thank you. I will give you the floor. Just a very brief perspective from a chair point of view. I think we hear you. There's one element that maybe that you raised. It might be bigger, as the director pointed out. It might be bigger than what we have in the current CTCN mandate. So there's maybe guidance from party needed. Understanding your concern, we should see to what extent we can take this up in the current program of work. Not in the program of work, in the annual operating plan for next year. And I think they try to address this risk reduction element, how we can maybe incorporate it now, but there's maybe also, and I think your constituency is very well represented also at the negotiation, that you can maybe try to also discuss with parties, because we are implementing a mandate that is given to the CTCN by the parties. So maybe a hybrid approach might be a useful element. This is just a short comment, but with this I would give the floor to Joseph now.
Thank you, Vice Chair, and good morning, colleagues. I just have a short comment on number 15. If I recall, CTCN appointed a regional focal point in Senegal to look at, for example, the African or West African countries. I was thinking that probably if you look at this item, we could see more of engagement from that focal point, because from my point of view, we haven't had a lot of engagement. I think as it stands now, we could benefit more from him in terms of trying to support us in communicating our concerns probably to CTCN, and also to ensure that at least we get the needed feedback. So I'm thinking that probably we could look at including engagement from that focal point with the NDEs in the country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Joseph. Are there other requests for the floor at the current stage? Norway, the floor is yours. Good.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair, and good morning, everyone. I support the comments regarding softening the language regarding CTC's that we will position itself as a de-risking mechanism for private sector investment. I just asked UNIDO shortly whether we do some work here already, and I do understand that PFAN has done some work in this domain from for the CTCN, but I'm not sure how much we are able to do, how much do we do from before, and does this change anything from existing language elsewhere that we have had before in our work plans? And this is also connected to one of the tasks that's mentioned in the new A2. It said the CTCN will strengthen the engagement of the private sector in technical assistance, including through supporting private sector stakeholders in developing countries in the preparation of climate technology business plans and roadmaps of technical assistance deliverables. Is this something that CTCN does already? Do we engage directly with private sector, or do we go through the NDEs? And if yes, should that be noted in when the activities is being described? Then I have a comment to the suggestion by Sumaya. I don't think it's a solution, but I think it should be noted that I remember that we had this discussion before, and the social and environmental safeguards that is agreed to in UNIDO and UNEP as host organizations also apply to the CTCN, if I'm not wrong. So I do think that we do have a starting point for doing some sort of for assessment, and not just a starting point, but maybe an obligation to see the work of the CTCN in the context of the existing safeguards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mette. And maybe we could ask the Secretary in Parallel to maybe add a reference to the existing safeguard, so that we can maybe also give the confidence to our ENGO representative. I have on my list now Moa from Sweden, followed by Spencer and Claudia, and then I also see another flag from the Ringos. So Moa, you're next.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair, and good morning, colleagues. And thank you very much to the Secretariat for all these updates. It looks very good. Just some questions for clarifications. I wonder, in the second paragraph, the last sentence, it's great that you've included this, the update. If countries request, you will be able to provide input to the updated NDCs and the long-term strategies. I wonder if we could just maybe clarify this sentence a little bit, because I thought it could be easier to read exactly what type of input can be given upon request. And I also suggest to change long-term strategies into long-term low greenhouse gas emission development strategies, as is written in Article 4 in the Paris Agreement. And regarding the paragraph 5, I support what Mette just said and Sumaya also said, and I think we could maybe delete the second and the third sentence in this paragraph and make it a bit softer. Thank you.
Thank you. Spencer?
Just on paragraph 3, just a clarification. 3A, just to find out whether or not it's said to produce quantitative impact. Is it quantifiable or quantitative? Just want a clarification on this. and maybe it should be impacts, but I just want to clarify whether it is quantitative impacts, or what I mean by this, if it's quantifiable impacts. And on the budget, I think we need to have a grand total. So I don't know how we're going to approve a budget without a grand total. So I think we must have calculate the program support before we leave here.
Thank you. Claudia?
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, colleagues. I just wanted to provide also some reaction to the comments by Sumaya. I think it's a very important point, and probably, as Mete said, there might be some precedents on the work of UNIDA UNEP. I also wanted to highlight that there is also discussion under the UNFCCC about how to discuss this and there's language on environmentally and socially sound technologies, trying to capture the social concerns and the environmental concerns as well. So it's about communities, and it's also about potential impacts on ecosystems and larger regional impact that some projects might have. So I think those are is language that is also there for us to use. And having said that, I think it's very important to note that this is the 2019 operating plan. So I think it's important to be very concrete about what the CTCN can do in this regard, and so that we are able to actually do it and make sure that it's not just something aspirational, very unclear what they need to do. So I think it's important that if we capture this other concept, maybe it's better in the work program that is a little bit midterm, so that they can also think about ways to do it. And as you can mention, there's also some work from the tech coming up that might be useful for the CTCN as they think about this dimension. Thank you. Should I just very quick comment on the document? Thank you very much, colleagues from the Secretariat. I think it looks very good. I also support Moa's point on making a little bit clearer the sentence in paragraph 2. And also it says contributes second round of NDCs, and maybe we can add comma and NAPs as appropriate, since there's no second round for NAPs, but it's also important to highlight that we will be contributing to the NAPs process as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Matthew?
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair, and thank you to the Secretariat. It seems working in the evenings is a good thing. We should do it more often. It's a welcome document. It has vastly improved as we would have hoped, and our expectations are met. I just have a couple of comments, really. Some of them around language, consistency of language, and some of them, I'm going to refer to both documents. Is that the appropriate, or are you just referring to the first the operating plan at the moment? Right, okay, the operating plan. I would agree with the comments that were said by Mo and Mete just around paragraph 5. I like what it's trying to say, but I think that depending on the audience, they may misinterpret. De-risking from a private sector perspective is all about finance, and it's really about reducing their risk exposure. So it might give them the idea that you're going to be giving them money to reduce their exposure, which you're not. So just to bear that in mind, they would view it differently. Often due diligence, people conceive it in terms of helping you with legal frameworks. So certainly in my business, we do a lot of due diligence in terms of helping create the right provide the right assistance in terms of research proposals before the research proposals begin. So I think it's a good thing that the CTCN could get involved with in terms of the technical assistance side of their work. But just to bear it in mind that the language means different things depending on what constituency you're trying to influence. The other comment I have is around paragraph 13. Traditional, modern and high-tech solutions. Now, high-tech solutions this is really the issue that I have. I prefer the use of the language in the other document where it talks about prioritizing high potential technologies. So high-tech solutions could be anything from CCS to hydrogen to anything. So I would be very cautious in that language. Let me just continue. It would be nice after paragraph 17 if there was some reference to engagement and learning in terms of some of the points that were made in the other document, but I can approach those. But just a placeholder that engagement and learning would be kind of welcome in paragraph, and that just after or within paragraph 17. In terms of A2 and under technical assistance, I'm on page 6 here. There's an awful lot of talk about the private sector, and I know that they're important, but you can't, every second line you come to the private sector. And Suma, my colleague beside me, Suma, mentioned it's much more challenging to engage in the private sector. They don't just turn up, right? So a strategy about how you would engage with the private sector. I know these are all very welcome points when they're in the room, but getting them into the room is the challenge. So how you even, like, if you send a letter to the senior CEOs of the major companies within the region, it doesn't mean that they will turn up the same way that maybe the private or the public sector does. So maybe just think about that in terms of how you engage. Finally, under stakeholder engagement, on behalf of the Ringos, I really welcome B24. So supporting a new community of practice among research institutes through targeted network events. What I might suggest is a slight alteration of the language from research institutes to research performing organizations, if possible. There is a different terminology of this group. I think in the other document we refer to academic and innovation centers, and again I would like that to be called research performing organizations as well. What I would like in terms of this sentence is if you just add a little bit of text onto it, so support the new community of practice among RPOs through targeted network events with the objective of, and then I articulate whether that is about stimulating mobility, transfer of lessons learned, or transfer of knowledge, or whatever the intent is, but that would be very welcome in terms of the fourth one. And my very last point is around the last regional stakeholder engagement at the top of page 8. It might be useful in the annex if you had a matrix of the stakeholders, because when I read this document, and when we're referring to stakeholders outside of the convention, really the only one referenced is the private sector. So it might be just good to remind the reader about who the other stakeholders are. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. I see one more request for the floor. I would close the list after Ian, and then I would close the list after Ian, and maybe if Mette insists, I would also give her the floor. But then we would maybe briefly see how to incorporate the changes, because we try to be operational, because we have an operating plan here, see what we can do to also, because it's a very important element to really be able to endorse this, so what could be fixed here, and what are more elements of a strategic nature, or we can maybe bring into discussion on the program of work. So with this, I have two more requests for the floor. And Ian, you're next.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. Thanks for the work on this overnight. I think it's in very good shape, and I think the edits are very good, and I only have 2 comments. First, on the private sector, a lot of discussion already. I think it's good that we're kind of really thinking through what it means to engage with the private sector, the idea of having a communication plan for, and actually a general plan for how we can engage and bring in the private sector is a very good idea. But I think when we go through it, we need to be careful in making sure we understand what we mean and that we're committing to something that we're able to do in the next year. So both in paragraph 5 and A2.1, we need to just, I think, ask the Secretariat, do you have a concrete idea in mind for projects or activities which this would apply to, or is this more something that's aspirational and we're trying to kind of reach for and find a activity that fits the description? So if there's something concrete in mind, then maybe that would be useful in helping us figure out the best way to reflect it. And then my other point is on the budget. We talked yesterday about the need for improving budget documentation and transparency on the budget, and I see very minimal changes here, unfortunately. And I think at a minimum, we need to see what the income is for 2019, so we can compare that to the planned amount and see if there's any surplus or deficit. Thanks.
Thank you, Ian. Well, I see that one flag disappeared. I overlooked another flag. So, Oli, you would be the last speaker.
Thank you. I will try to make this quick. Just under Section 3A, technical assistance, I have just a couple of comments for clarification. When we say the CTCN will support countries in designing and implementing high-quality, impactful technical assistance, I had to read it several times, and because it sounded like you will support them in designing these plans, and then I just realized what the quick fix might be is CTCN will support countries by designing and implementing. So I think, I don't know if I was the only one tripping up on that, but that's one suggestion. Under A3, number 3, I'm not sure what it means by accessing feasibility studies. Does it mean we will facilitate feasibility studies for their proposals, or accessing other feasibility studies as examples? So I'm not quite sure what that means. Third and final comment would be under B3, under number 1. I'm not sure what it means, engaging in the definition of operational modalities. Perhaps it's just very technical language that I'm not understanding in particular, and I welcome clarification. And under B3, number 2, I think it would be helpful at the end of the sentence to add "and doing what?" So mapping relevant processes and partnerships with the potential for stronger collaboration, and using that too, or creating a prioritization process after that. And just in closing, I want to say that this looks really good, and I think the new categorization and thematic approach to placing the information is really, really strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Oli, particularly for closing with a positive remark. I will now briefly consult with my Madam Chair to see how to proceed. One. So thank you for your patience. So we move now to the operational elements. Many of the suggestions, I think, they are about clarifying wordings, the wording used, and we would move more into an academic setting. Now, while we need to progress also on the other agenda items, I would like to stop this element now and maybe looking towards my right, towards, I assume Manfredi is the main target here. I think you captured the comments coming from the advisory board. I just finished my sentence. I would give the floor back to you. And we would encourage you to work on the last version of the text, on the clean version, incorporating the changes. And then we would maybe, while we already address the next agenda item, this would be the joint annual report, to give you the chance maybe to introduce the track changes, to clarify the wordings, and maybe highlight issues where you had conflicting messages, so that we could lend this here. But before doing so, Ian, you try to put up your flag, and I also see Claudia.
Thank you. Could you just clarify which changes you plan to make, and in particular, if you plan to update the budget with income? Thanks.
Claudia?
Just also very quick, paragraph 14. There is missing words at the end. And paragraph 13, the technology cycle. We deleted technology innovation cycle, but then it needs that small word. And just as a suggestion on the Sumaya's comment, maybe we can add in paragraph 2, environmentally and socially sound technologies.
Thank you. And I saw Mark's flag.
Yeah, in response to Ian's suggestion, I think it's very good. What my recommendation based on conversation with Didier would be that we add a separate paragraph summarizing the income statement. So we would have a good summary based on his presentation yesterday of where we stand with regard to funds available and the projected receipts over 2019. And then that would provide a good basis for here is a projected expenditure in the budget. But I would not try to, if with your indulgence, I would separate them like that, or propose to.
Yuka, you didn't...
Yeah, I was just trying to say that indeed we had the explanation yesterday of what we have anticipated incomes coming in the next years, and what is the carryover and reserve, so we can put that document. But it's, of course, we usually don't put it in the budget, this particular budget formula. That budget is budget, and these incomes are information in order to base our budget in. So that's just that information we can include in the document, but not, of course. We normally have a budget separately, just like you have this as an annex now. Then there is an issue, of course, that with last year's budget we had the PSC like estimated project support cost, and that was what we did last year. We try to do it again, like Spencer has suggested.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I just wanted to thank you very much for the suggestion. Can we just check? You say it's usually we do not have it in the same column. I would just ask that you check with what was being done last year and the year before to see whether we actually had a separate column in the budget or if we had it as separate. And if we did not have it in the same column, I guess the way Mark the way forward Mark suggested would be fine. Thank you.
I also agree that we should maybe be minimalistic in with the changes, and also give the confidence that we are able to endorse this at this meeting. Okay, so with this, I understand that the Secretariat is able to incorporate the changes, and that we will see before the coffee break, the potential coffee break, we would see a final product. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, we park the operating plan for 2019 now and look to another item that is backward looking, which is the joint annual report. So we also asked to, we had a discussion on the different on the proposed text. We have in front of us, we have an amended version, and I would like to ask the Secretariat to briefly enlighten us about the changes they have done in the document and how they address the different guidance they received from parties. So, Scott, can I give it to you?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Yes, all right. So we took note of your comments last evening, and thank you very much for your constructive efforts in helping us to make this a better document. What you have before you, I tried to highlight those areas where we made changes. The first area, obviously, we double bracketed paragraph 5, or we bracketed paragraph 5, added brackets around sub-bullet 1, pending confirmation from one of our donor countries, removed the brackets, or removed the highlights, I suppose, from sub-bullet 2 and sub-bullet 3, and then bracketed sub-bullet 4. We adjusted in paragraph 7 to make sure that we received the Q3 numbers just this past Monday, so we adjusted the numbers in order to for our technical assistance in order to make sure that they were accurate. There was some discussion of reordering the sections, and we were somewhat bound by the sort of the format that is adopted by the text, so we tried to be consistent, but we did wind up reordering section B and section C. In paragraph 8, there was a request where we inserted an indicative cost of approximately $5 million for the attached to the first 40 completed technical assistance interventions. We also added a comment, or we added a sentence in order to clarify the methodology associated with how we came up with the numbers that were presented below. In 8D, we, rather than, because we had not specified that we were looking at a 10-year time period, we instead broke it into an annual basis and noted that this would be annual reductions over a proposed 10-year time period. We took on board the comments, recognizing, of course, that we do need to be very careful with the way we frame the estimated intended future impacts of actions that are associated with technical assistance interventions. So we tried to clarify that, we tried to tighten that language a little bit to be a little bit more accurate, and we removed sub-bullet F in the interests of, I think, just thought it was a good suggestion, really. Paragraph 9, there was a request to specify the percentage of network members who are now responding to technical assistance requests. I believe the figure is actually, it's 65.5%. So if approximately 2/3 is acceptable, it seemed to fit better just from a linguistic point of view. The chart, which will be updated in the final version once the editors have their way with it at the UNFCCC, will change a little bit in how it appears, but that's simply for formatting purposes. But you can see that we've added Q3 and that the numbers in the paragraphs above align with the subtotals. What have I just done? All right, paragraph 10. We noted that, it has been pointed out, obviously, that the number of technical assistance requests that the CTCN is receiving has slowed However, we wanted to reflect that, but also balance that with the fact that we are receiving and developing more multi-country requests. So in many cases, we're actually serving more countries, particularly when some of these multi-country requests have 10 or 13 or 16 countries, but are only represented by one single TA request in the data. We adjusted the figures again per data that became available on Monday. Just to note that we now had 31% adaptation focused, 53% on mitigation, and 16 relating to both. We added a reference to national adaptation plans at the end of paragraph 11. And we cleaned up the language. As it was rightly pointed out, it could have been much clearer. We hope that this construction is acceptable to the board. Scrolling down to paragraph 37, this is where I indicated that we have swapped section B and section C. In paragraph 39, we had originally said, I believe, smaller valued technical assistance. It now reads smaller, just to make the point that the cost associated with the TA as well as the effort involved are and the timing involved are indeed smaller and swifter. The table 1 beneath paragraph what is now 49, we reflected the adjustment to the Norwegian contribution, both in the Norwegian budget line and also in the subtotal. We also...
Just on this point, we discussed this and we recognized that it was not in the total sum of donations. Now, the figure which we now inserted here is still not totally confirmed. It is very much on that level. We talked about $300,000. But our financial assistant has informed that it might change a little bit, just so that don't be surprised if the final figure, when endorsed by also from Norway, is somewhat different, but the level is there.
Thanks. Sorry, and that adjustment is reflected in the total. We also added the cash contribution from our co-host UNIDO of $1.8 million and reflected both these figures in the totals. We also removed, I will delete this final line, but we removed the notation, the reference to NREL and DNB. We adjusted the total in paragraph 50. Now, paragraph 51 had been former paragraph 20, which was attracted some fairly strong views yesterday. It now reads, in 2018, the CTCN continued to receive pledges from bilateral donors announced as part of the $23 million U.S. pledged at COP22 that provided needed funding for CTCN operations in 2017 and 2018. The CTCN continues to experience challenges related to the availability of sufficient and sustained funding as it strives to fully fund its activities in future years. The advisory board endorsed a resource mobilization strategy in 2018 that will be implemented in 2019. It also notes that requests for technical assistance that had not been able to be prioritized are anticipated to be served in 2019. I believe this construction addresses a balance of all comments, but of course we're happy to receive your views. Paragraph 52, it was pointed out that CTCN requires funding not just for its technical assistance services, but indeed for its capacity building and its other core service offerings. So we replaced technical assistance with operations. It was suggested that this paragraph, what is now 62, would be better placed under lessons learned, which is where it now sits. And then we added a new paragraph 78, which is a very nearly word for word, with the exception of the updating of the figure of the paragraph that was inserted in the report from AB 8 2 years ago, requesting that the term of the non-governmental organizations represented on the board be extended from 1 year to 2 years. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Scott. I would be, in order to be operational, I would give the floor to advisory board meetings, to the advisory board members. I would suggest to approach it with each chapter by chapter. So I would ask you for the floor for the first part of paragraphs, and then we would move to the next one, so we can maybe narrow down the issues a bit more. Following this approach, I would first ask you if you have comments on the section, on the first six paragraphs. Okay, moving on to the second part B, it starts on para 7 and would end at para 12. Claudia, and followed by me.
On paragraph 10, it says a comparative decrease in single country requests has been balanced by the development of a significant number. So I'm not sure how many regional requests we have, but maybe just say by the development of regional multi-country requests. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew?
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair, Vice Chair. My concern is really around paragraph 8 and the value that it provides to the document, and whether we really want 8 to be included. To me, it's a little confusing, and I'll try to explain. So maybe you can clarify. It reads to me it was a backcasting exercise where we looked at the first 40 technical assistance interventions that total 5 million. And then we did a survey and asked people for their input. And then we did a forecasting exercise and we came up with these numbers. So to me, it's not clear what the time horizon is across these numbers. Is it over 10 years? Normally what you would present is, in the analysis, we forecasted based on X amount of investment, over X amount of time. We came with this number based on whatever. So to me, are the 130 workshops in the future, over 10 years, 5 years, 1 year? Or is it in the past? Have they already been done? The 51 projects implemented, deploying 100 technology types as a result of 41 interventions. That sentence I don't understand. So really it's clarity around the methodology and what value this is, considering this is responding to requests for technical assistance. That's the section that it's called. So, thank you.
Thank you. I suggest we move on, just narrow down the paras. If we take note that there's a concern around para 8. Claudia made a suggestion how to improve language in para 10. Moving forward, I would now check the funding section, starting from 13 and to 20. I think there's no big changes. So we move up to para 32, sorry. moving to other activities. So we go on to 37. So I think there have not been much changes. I'll go a bit faster. And now moving to part C, organizational structure of the CTCN. There have been not many changes. So I would now focus to the changes introduced in the funding section. Part 5, starting with 49 and ending with 57. Okay, I see one flag. Can I ask for short intervention?
Thank you. It's just a point of clarity, really. The Table 1 financial support, also called funding secured in the line above, is this hard funding secured or some of this in kind?
We come back to the in-kind question around the table, and now I'll open the rest of the document. So if they're up to, including the edit on power 78. It was building on the discussion yesterday. Claudia?
I would also like to add a second, Matthew, on how much of this is in kind and also how much of this is earmarked. Thank you.
Matthew?
Sorry, it was just around, I think you'd moved on to the last section, so welcome the paragraph 78. Maybe suggest replacing the word better with a more appropriate word to reflect the contribution of the delegates. So maybe a deeper or fuller or something, some other word rather than better.
Spencer?
Thank you, Chair. And let me thank the Secretariat for this document. A paragraph disappeared, paragraph 27. And from the last, there is a good attempt, in my view, in paragraph 51 to capture the sentiments in paragraph 27 and 20. But I think the two concepts can be reinserted in paragraph 51. The question of the risk, the future viability of the CTCN and technology development transfer services it provides. I think we need, this is a fact, that the concept of that risk is gone. And I think it says very clearly it is a major concern. And I think we need to clarify that clearer in 51. So I see a good attempt to bring all the views, but somehow I believe that we need to have a little more balance in 51 to capture the sentiments in 27. Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer. If you allow 1 second. While we see how to clarify the items on the different articles that are still open, maybe you could think on, because we had yesterday a discussion, we had different views in the room on how to, on the one hand, coming back to this more careful language you're referring to, also reflecting the positive developments that we had on the other side. So we should maybe move more to maybe improving the language that we have in this existing paragraph. So maybe we can add on, like maybe I can ask for textual proposal. But with this in mind, I see 2 flags. I think Moa was first and followed by Ian.
Okay, thank you very much for all these updates, and it looks very good regarding para 76 and 77. Which concerns the independent review of the CTCN. and they are currently now under the headline Key Messages. And I just wonder if it would make more sense to move these two paragraphs under the section Challenges and Lessons Learned, because Key Messages seems to be like a bit of a summary of the whole document, and because these two paras haven't been addressed previous in the document, it's maybe a bit strange to have them in a summary. And in addition to that, I guess 76 and 77 contains the main points of the independent review, but I think it would also be good to insert a full reference to the independent review for an external reader of this document, and possibly also if we want to include the review from Danida, I think it would be good in one of these paras. And I think also still it would be good to add an additional paragraph on the response to these reviews from CTCN, as we discussed on Wednesday. And then just in comment to what Spencer said on the para 27 that we discussed yesterday, I also noticed the whole para is now not in the document, but maybe if we would still have that under the section Challenges and Lessons Learned, and maybe keep the first two sentences in the paragraph we had yesterday, 27, could be a suggestion. Thanks.
Thank you. Ian, followed by Spencer.
Okay. It's just responding on paragraph 51. Look, we want the report to be factual and be a accurate reflection of what the CTCN is doing and has received in terms of donor support. The notion that there's challenges related to availability of sufficient and sustained funding as it strives to fully fund its activities is subjective and not warranted based on the actual history of the CTCN, which we've seen has been funded from year to year, and we haven't seen kind of collapsing away. So I actually think if we're going to start adding edits in and changing things around, we should delete the second sentence of 51. Thanks.
Thank you. Spencer?
I would not react to this because, but I wanted to take the floor on 78 and maybe to find out whether or not we can, in 78, reaffirm the previous AB decision to show that this is not the first time this matter came up. So this 12th advisory board meeting reaffirmed the previous advisory board meeting on this, actually. So I don't know if it might be useful to inform this. But I'm hesitating to get back into this finance argument. But as we already said, and we heard from the director, we have existing contracts, especially in the $2 million for operational expenses. This too is also in jeopardy.
Okay, Claudia, a quick intervention, then we see how we can move forward.
Just very quick, just to second Spencer on the need to work a little bit more on 51. And I think one good idea is to work on Moa's suggestion of having some language on challenges and lessons learned as a highlight of the challenge of continuing funding. I understand there has not been a collapse of the CTCN, but this is important to know that going forward, we want to increase the ambition, to increase cooperation, and that might require funding, and that, of course, requires funding. It also to know that it has not delivered on the scale that it was originally planned. So I think this is the time for us to bring these two issues to the COP in the report of the activities and in the challenges as the CTCN plan ahead. It is to note the risk. It's not to note that it has collapsed, but it is something that is challenging for the CTCN. We've been discussing this many times, and I think Spencer pointed out that there might be language that we can draw from previous decisions, and I think that is potentially a good way forward for us to endorse this meeting, given the time we have. Thank you.
Thank you for outlining a way forward. I think we need to see how to bring these different proposals on text items. I would try to isolate this now to clear the other elements that have been suggested, and just to get your feeling on the other parts. We can maybe use the next 15 minutes also to find maybe in the smaller setting consensual language on this finance-related part. Going to some of the bigger changes, I think there was a consent for MOA's proposal on moving the references to the reviews to a different part, and also highlighting how this is taken up. And Scott, I'm also trying to overlook Yuka here and see if you're able to incorporate this, being close to the keyboard. There was a proposal from the Ringo side to delete para 8, because this is not factually linked to the activities of 2018. I heard no reaction on it, so I see a reaction on it, so I'll see 2 reactions on it. So can I get a very quick reaction?
Yeah, at least I would like to keep the passage regarding to the estimated greenhouse gas emissions that are likely to be reduced. I think this is very important information that should be in it.
Okay, Sergio?
This is to say that I support what Matthew said.
Okay, thank you for the guidance. I would suggest that we try to see if we can maybe focus this a bit, so they have a more concise language, and maybe put this in a box. So maybe we can also see offline how to land this. Matt, followed by Spencer.
Yeah, absolutely. My proposal really was just to provide more clarity, so it wouldn't be misinterpreted, rather than a full deletion. The way that it is written at the moment, I would prefer if it was fully deleted. I see great value in talking about the subject, so you could provide clarity.
Spencer?
Yes, I think I will ask Mark to provide some clarity also on research performing institutions as a substitute for what we have. I'm not quite sure if I capture that very well, so could you explain that a little bit more for me? Research performing institutions to substitute for.
Okay. Oli?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to support Matthew's latest clarification of his suggestion that I think it would be highly preferable if it could be clarified and the quantitative information left in. I think it's really, really useful, but clarification would be a strong preference from my side. Thank you.
Thank you.
In case that this para 8 will remain, I ask for clarification for the subsection D, that is the last part, in which that says that 110 million tons reducing annually, but I don't understand over.
11, because it's
It's over 11 million. Okay, no, it's okay.
Maybe indeed this explanation, it came from you actually, that you wish to see that we work on quantitative aggregated impacts of because the story of the CTCN would be weak without telling this. And this is our attempt. And yes, indeed, it was retroactively. It was not in the planning documents of those 40 technical assistants. That's why we had to go back and dig those numbers from the proponents, NDEs, and the implementers, and they didn't like it also. I mean, that going back and thinking, and Matthew, as I said, going back and thinking what could happen if they really implement all of those recommendations in the DAs, all the manuals, all the blueprints, plans, feasibility studies, investment proposals. There are 2 differences. A and C, for example, are indeed something which has happened. You are right that we maybe put that in the sum, that this happened because of the technical assistance we have carried on. But then B and the D and E are those which would happen on the time, and some timelines are different. Some maybe indeed the investment would come within a couple of years, like what happened in Bosnia-Herzegovina, when we indeed induced a $30 million investment, which is going on now. But then some might happen 5 years or even 10 years time, depending on government actions, the legislation, how the standards are transmitted, how the agricultural new practices are put on the field through the extension services. So in that sense, it's indeed very difficult. And this is unprecedented. Nobody usually does this because those who usually bring quantitative aggregated impacts are the funding organizations or investment organizations who are much nearer to the implementation than we. But if we don't try this, then I also agreed with you when you were saying that please bring these things. We can still put precautions on, more precautions. We are saying here indicative findings, anticipated, and so on. And I do totally admit that the methodology is pretty weak. This is a kind of survey-based at the moment. We try to make a better methodology next time because then we have at least some pre-documents which we have already established. But I'm in your hands also that whether you would like to have this kind of paragraph here at the moment. This is the best trial we have, but we can still work out on the language as you have guided.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Ian?
Thank you. And just on paragraph 8, I think it's important to include this in some forms. In a way, this is really reflecting some of the best results we're seeing from the CTCN. But I also think, the question is whether the Secretariat is confident in standing behind this data. If you feel it's defensible and the methods for calculating these numbers are defensible and rigorous, then we can present this to the COP at the Joint Annual Report. Perhaps if we need some more caveats in there, we can find a way to work that in. These are, preliminary findings or, subject to further methodological review or examination of assumptions, whatever it is. But I think, it's really, for me, if the Secretariat sees these as defensible numbers that were derived in a rigorous way. But I think, again, it's important that we at least start to try and show some of this information. So I think it's good work here. Yeah.
Thank you. Claudia?
Thank you, Chair. And I very much support Ian's intervention. I think it's very important to, as much as the Secretariat can stand to the numbers, show some of the numbers. Maybe one suggestion I would do, and maybe going to something that Matthew also mentioned, is there are things that are factual and there are things that are estimates. So I think we should have this separate. So just reporting on all the events that happened, the workshops, the projects, and that's something that already happened. And then we can say, and this is estimated, and have some caveats on the emissions reductions and livelihoods impacted. And I think that makes it a little bit clearer on what is the report on things done in the past, during this year, and things that are estimated as total impact of the CTCN action. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. I think the message was clear that you want to see this reference, but with a more careful language, and also to have more caveats if needed, to have really robust statement in there. With this, I see Matt, and then I would like to close this discussion for the time.
Yeah, my response is just to Spencer's question. In terms of the research performing organizations, it's just about terminology. So some of the language in the document refers to research institutes, which possibly universities wouldn't see themselves as being. It might be something that is a state institute or a private sector institute. And there's also academic and innovation centres, which state institutes that perform research may not see themselves as being, but the term research performing organisation, certainly in my jurisdiction, tries to encompass everyone whether you're a state entity performing research, an academic institute, an institute of technology, all embracing, all encompassing. That was just my suggestion.
Thank you. Okay, what I would suggest before you, Ian, you try to put up your flag, or okay, just in terms of moving this forward, I think the clear message is what we should do about Para 8. The other comments are more of, I think, are not contested. It's just more or less an editorial clarifying exercise that I think is maybe a bit of discussion work, what we call in Brussels, we call it co-creation work we should do around this funding-related parts. And I would invite, eventually, if we would move into a different setting, those that feel strongly about one way or the other to get together and go after the coffee break, provide language that's acceptable to both sides, that we can maybe improve the language around the existing Para 51 to have something that we can have as a factual statement for the 2018 report agreed by the advisory board. So that, and I would see this consensus language would be the bottleneck. Once we have this, we would be able to endorse the report as with the amendments that we discussed. This would be my proposal, that we would move into a kind of coffee working setting. Before we move into this, we have another big item to discuss, which is the program of work. And before moving into the coffee break, I would maybe ask the Secretariat to briefly introduce or inform us what the works that happened yesterday, so that we can maybe after the coffee, we can use the coffee time also to discuss how to proceed with this item, how to give guidance, and how to design the further process on the program of work. With this, I would like to turn to the Secretariat to inform us. But I see not on finance-related issues or on other items. Really? Really? A strong point. Okay, Germany, you have the floor.
Thank you, Carsten. Regarding the key messages, paragraph 69, I feel that the language focuses a lot on adaptation, and since we should eagerly find a balance between adaptation and mitigation, I wonder if some language concerning the abatement potential of the projects could be included. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the strong point. With this, so we are not finished on the annual report, but we are parking this and come back to this after the co-creation time. With this, I would now like to turn to the program of work and ask for a quick update on what we have in front of us and what happened yesterday in the Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. Given the majority of comments that we received yesterday, we decided to go with a structural overhaul of the program of work. So as you can see, all of the front information, particularly as it relates to the first program of work, is now in an annex. That annex has not been gone through in great detail to fix some of the comments that we received, primarily because we ran out of time. But what we have done is to restructure the program of work, providing hopefully what you will find as the strategic messaging and clear, goals for this program of work. They are roughly in line with the technology framework. We have tried to provide detail where we can. We have left an open space for additional information that will be dropped in after the technology framework has been agreed. And then we go into the 5 goals that we regrouped our program of work to follow. And the table from the program of work has also been updated to reflect that, and it includes activities that would be associated with each of those goals. They do include a number of activities that have been discussed, including not directly addressing de-risking, but providing a platform for sharing best practices for de-risking climate technologies at a subnational level, just to point that out. And then the rest of it remains fairly much as it is, Scott, I believe. So what we are hoping for is, what we have decided to do with the theory of change is to include it as an appendix once UNIDO and UN Environment have finished their theory of change exercise within their documentation process. So we have a solid and complete theory of change that can be presented to everyone. We are hoping that you will find this an acceptable way forward. So, Scott, do you have anything to add? Or Yuka?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Yeah, no, just to build on what Debbie was saying, and I realize that this can be hard to follow at speed. There are a couple of things that I wanted to point out as well, however. One is that as Debbie mentioned, the goals support the overarching themes of the technology framework of the Paris Agreement. What we tried to do is align our activities, broadly speaking, with those themes. If you'll recall, the CTCN submitted we made a submission to the COP last year on the various themes of the technology framework. We realized that it's an awkward time to try and come up with a program of work when we don't have a technology framework that we are supposed to support that has yet been agreed. But our read of the room was that trying to align our work both against the goals, or rather against the themes of the framework, which we've captured as goals, and then clustering our activities. We stayed away from language that related to outcomes and outputs, as some of that seemed to be sensitive. We also noted here that the program of work is subject to further elaboration in order to ensure alignment with the project documents of its host organizations. The last thing that I would point out is the very last paragraph on page 10. We obviously talk about the cross-cutting themes as in the annual operating plan of private sector engagement and gender. We have some detail there. We talk about monitoring, evaluation, and reporting. But there is this final line. We do not necessarily include a budget with the program of work, but we do note that to effectively support the technology framework of the Paris Agreement and implement this program of work, the CTCN will require a budget beginning at approximately US $10 million and scaling up to at least US $15 million annually by 2022. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that paragraph. And as Debbie noted, a great deal of attention went into the first 10 pages. Some reorganization took place afterwards, but really what we were looking for was, what we were looking to discuss is what is on the first 10 pages, not afterwards.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Scott, for informing us about the document, and also thank you for the hard work that went to it yesterday in the evening hours and morning hours, maybe. So I will not open the floor now, but we would come back to this after the coffee break to maybe give you, following the discussion yesterday, some higher level guidance on maybe what we think about this new approach, maybe going a bit into the structure, highlighting things that the advisory board might want to see, and also guiding the further process on this element, because I think we've done a big step yesterday. We can maybe do even further steps. And see what kind of product. Also, you highlighted the evolving guidance coming from parties through the framework, through the technology framework in the NEC, and we already talked about the 1.5 degree report that might also inform the work of the CTCN. So we would come back to this, maybe guide the further process with what we can do in this advisory board meeting. With this, I would still ask my chair to see if we can go for coffee. If we should have a very short coffee break. I understand the coffee is ready, and we agreed on a strict end time at 1 o'clock. There are some more important items we need to come back to. So I ask for a short coffee break. And not to forget about finalizing the language on the funding-related part of those who have a strong view on this left and right side of the table. And maybe you start here and to see, and then you move together to the coffee corner and discuss this over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can. We're changing
You can control the show on there.
Colleagues, can we have us take a seat and start the process? So I think we have the text from CTCN annual operating plan and budget. So if we can open it to the screen and go line by line and to agree on the changes that were made by the Secretariat. Alfredi, you can maybe also brief.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone, again. So we've tried to respond to your comments and guidance. Paragraph 2, we have mentioned national adaptation plans as appropriate, and we have changed long-term strategy into long-term low greenhouse gases emission development strategies, and try to explain also what is that we can provide input to on the role and potential of climate technologies. Paragraph 3, we have changed quantitative with quantifiable, as requested by Spencer. Is that okay? Paragraph 5, we have changed the quite substantively on what we can do for private sector, and the new text reads, in close cooperation with NDEs, the CTCN will work towards addressing barriers faced by the private sector to contribute to the development and transfer of climate technologies, mindful of the social risks associated with environmentally sound technologies and technology neutrality. It may do so by providing technical pre-feasibility and market-enabling studies as needed. CTCN will create engagement opportunities for the private sector through identifying partnership and supporting events. This approach also entails enhanced engagement with NDEs from developing countries that can help identifying opportunities for public-private partnership in developing countries. Further down, we have changed I-Tech solution with I-Impact solution, as requested by the Ringo representative, actually. We have fixed paragraph 14, adding the missing words, that is fast technical assistance. On paragraph 17, we have further specified that the CTCN will develop and implement regional tailored communication strategy through social media and collaboration with regional partners in order to generate awareness of services, foster engagement of stakeholders, and share climate technology information. We have fixed that the CTCN will support countries by designing and implementing equality. Thank you, Audley. On A3.3, indeed, we're not accessing feasibility study, but preparing feasibility studies and supporting piloting of appropriate technologies. Also, CTCN will be producing new communication material for climate technical assistance targeting a private sector audience, such as executive briefs, investment notes, and blog posts for business leader. Number 4, CTCN will be supporting a new community practice among research performing organizations to targeted network events with the objective of stimulating knowledge transfer. We'll also continuing explore ways to strengthen collaboration between the financial and technology mechanisms to continue building trust and operational relationships. and we'll be mapping relevant process and partnership with the potential for stronger collaborations in order to facilitate developing countries' access to climate technology financing. We have specified who we meant by regional stakeholders, that are government, civil society, private sector, and research performing organizations. In the budget, we have added a line on the income, specifically the 2019 budget of USD 10.31 million, presented below is based upon financial resources currently available, 11.6 million US dollars in carryover from 2018, and sign agreement for 2.7 million US dollar for a total of 14.3 million US dollars. We have also included a maximum amount for program support cost, that is 1.1 million, and then defined a maximum grant total of 10.31 million. I have indeed fixed, thanks Orly, the numbers for the high impact scenario that were wrong. So the new grant total for high impact scenario is 14.21 millions. And that's it.
Thank you, Manfredi.
Thank you.
If you can show from the beginning, and if you can agree topic by topic, it will be probably easier. So for the introduction, if it's acceptable for you, from 1 to, can you come down? Yes, Spencer. It is quantifiable, yeah, okay. So
S.
S, okay. Great. Can we go to the next? Yep. Item 5. Yeah. Can we agree on this text? Okay. Yes, Somaya.
It's right, but the language is a little confusing. When you say social risk associated with environmentally sound technologies and technology neutrality, it's not clear. It will be much clearer if you say social and environmental risk associated, like Claudia pointed out earlier, I think.
Is it okay now for you? The rest.
What does it mean, sir?
Don't need environmental.
Can we Can you go for this, Spencer? Okay, great. So agreed, this one. Next. There's a footnote.
The footnote was already there this morning. I just forgot to accept it as a change. So I'm happy to, I can do it now. If you...
Can you accept? Yes, Claudia. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry also because Matthew is not here, but I don't think high-impact solutions made the same sense now. Because it's traditional model, and it was supposed to be increased technology, complexity, which I don't want to say is that traditional technologies might not be high impact, right? They might have some impact that is high depending on the conditions. So maybe, as I remember, we can use. Yes. Thank you, Claudia. I think there was high impact climate technology solutions. Would it make sense?
Traditional and modern.
So can you agree on this? We can move forward to the regional level. Do we have the changes there? So fast technical assistance is, we agreed on this, okay? Yeah? Item 17. Can we agree? Okay. Yes, please. Can you say it to the microphone, please?
I was wondering, collaboration, it should be collaborate. Is that?
Collaboration with.
Yeah, wait, it's collaborate with.
Okay. Can we move? I think it's agreeable because of typing. Can you go further? B2. Spencer? No, okay, we can agree. B, C, strengthen collaboration with relevant climate change process, including through. Yes, Jan.
Could you just go back one? E2. In part 4, maybe say the objective of stimulating knowledge sharing. I think that is more common. Thanks.
Can we agree on B3? I think we can. Is it okay for? Can we move to the next item? Okay. This addition, again, I think it was from you. Is it the text acceptable for all of us? I think we can move down. Estimated program support costs. Yes, Spencer.
Just a clarity on how did they arrive at 1.1?
Thank you. Caught me in mid-stride. Spencer, I think the question came from you, sorry? Or, yeah, thank you. So what we did is we took the historical average and just carried it forward. I think it's a reasonable approximation. I would caution, however, and my plea would be to remove the word max because it is hard to predict exactly, and I would not want to mislead anyone by saying maximum. So this is a good projection.
Is this acceptable, Foreman? Okay, we can. And yeah, no calculation. So can we say that we agree on the document as a result?
So you cover it.
No, Claudia, probably it's okay. Great. So, see no objections. So it's decided. Great. Now we can move to the joint annual report. Can we have it on the screen? Okay, Scott, if you can briefly go through the document and say what was the main change, and then to agree item by item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right, colleagues, members of the advisory board, thank you very much for your collegiality. We retain in paragraph, I suppose we can, no.
Have to
Yeah.
enlarge into
Oh,
text.
sorry. Apologies. Is that better? We good? Apologies. All right, we will leave those for now. For paragraph 8, it was proposed that by splitting activities and estimated impacts apart, we might provide a little bit more clarity in terms of those things that have actually taken place as opposed to those which are the impact of those which are anticipated to take place in the future. Are we seeking agreement item by item, or do you want it all the way through? Okay. All right. Paragraph 10 now reflects the suggestion that a significant number be removed. Apologies, and this has also been agreed. I do apologize, it takes longer to scroll when the text is legible. Okay. In terms of and I will zoom out just a little bit so that this fits on the screen. To address the suggestion that there be a distinction made between earmarked and non-earmarked funds, there was agreement that instead a reference could be made that further information related to donor contributions is available on the CTCN website. And then that will be hyperlinked within the report itself. Paragraph 51, it was agreed that the word fully would be deleted. We moved into the challenges and lessons learned section. We now have a new subheading called funding, which contains half of what was formerly paragraph 27. It reads, securing sustained funding to enable the CTCN to continue to deliver on its mandate is an issue of concern. The provision of technical assistance for technology development and transfer and building of endogenous capacities to developing countries is a core element of the Convention, the Paris Agreement, and several COP decisions. It was also taken on board that introducing the review, the independent review of the CTCN, and that actually should read, independent review of the CTCN with a specific notation as to what the independent review is included in the footnote. It was suggested that in introducing the review in the key messages was somewhat curious, so we've moved it to the challenges and lessons learned section. These two paragraphs remain as they were. There was also a suggestion made to include a third paragraph based on the presentation that was given on Wednesday afternoon that detailed the CTCN's response, actions in response to the review. That is something that I would propose to put before you. I just need about 10 minutes to write it. But the idea is that there could be a placeholder for the, as noted in the comment, a placeholder for a new paragraph 72 that would include a brief summary of actions taken in response to the independent review. Sorry, I didn't actually need to do that. So that would be the footnote there. And then finally, this paragraph would now read to more effectively contribute to advisory board discussions. And I apologize, there should also be a reference, as was suggested by Spencer, to the paragraph in the report from AB 8 making a similar suggestion. So I will, with your blessing, I will add that as well. And that is, that's the end.
Thank you, Scott. Can we go also, do you have a comment on the first item or on the last?
I wanted to some reference made in paragraph 69 to another mitigation project.
Mm-hmm.
So this could be added. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, then let's go by agreeing on the text, paragraph, para by para, and then the two editions will be made available as soon as possible.
Even try them.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's go now, para.
Activities. Can we?
Sure. Is the board, sorry.
Okay. Okay, so can we agree on those revisions on the first one showing here? For the paragraph. Can we agree on item 10? I think yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah, it's Claudia, please. You had a comment on,
it was just a clarification question on paragraph, I think it's 11, where you have bracketed naps.
move to the table. Can we agree on this text? Yes, Claudia.
Thank you very much. I think the request was also on more information of in-kind resources and some other conditions on this. So I think it would be good to have a little bit clearer note that the information on donor agreements is available on the CTCN website, and the footnote to the link, as we have in other references to websites, so that they can find them in the website. Thank you.
Is this version agreeable? Okay. We can move, I think. '51. Fully fund its activities in the future years. Can we agree on launching this word? We can. So, the biggest addition. Funding. Maybe we can agree on 79 first and then to the independent reviews. Good. Sure. Somehow. Yes, please. Somehow.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I have no problem with paragraph 69, but the way it stands here is as if we are just passing information. There is no action to be taken. There is no recommendation in terms of, how, to secure, such funding. It's just like we are passing information. Securing sustained funding to enable the CTCN to continue to deliver on its mandate is an issue of concern. Yes, we are just passing information. We need to take action. What action is supposed to be taken? I think we need to include this in this paragraph.
I think that we covered this particular issue, that how to do this, in the 51, where we said that we have endorsed the resource mobilization strategy. And that indeed lays out our actions, that how indeed to get resources for this. So if it's covered there. Yeah.
Yes, I can see that, but I think we still need to emphasize it in that particular paragraph. Madam Chair, I think we can borrow some of the language in that paragraph, and insert it in that paragraph 69.
Trying to put something.
We will just put it. Jan?
Hi, I'm sorry, but we already repeated that text about the resource mobilization strategy in 51, and a number of us met at the coffee break. It was an open invitation to all members and came up with some compromise language, so maybe it will be difficult to make changes at this point.
Thank you very much. I don't think this is changing anything since we're using the same language. Because if you see what we are emphasizing, what we said in paragraph 51, this one has already preceded what we have in paragraph 51. And if we borrowed the same language in paragraph 51 as an action point in paragraph 69, I don't think there is anything wrong in doing that. And it's just re-emphasizing the same action.
Okay. Maybe we can just make a comment on this and get back to it after we agree on the full text. Mm-hmm. 70 and 71, independent review of the CTCN. Yes, Spencer.
On 70, maybe just cosmetics, because I think I saw the word customer. Oh yes, customers of CTCN. Is that a language that we want to use?
We were using beneficiaries yesterday.
Orly?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that it may be just a typo, but the independent review of the CTCN have demonstrated, I'm assuming we're just talking about the one review and not the many reviews that have taken place? Okay, thank you.
So, Spencer, just
Yeah, well, that's it. I think that was point here is that 70 need a little drafting help. Even at the end, it says, which appreciate. So the activities of the CTCN have also responded to the needs, responded the needs. So we may need to have a little bit of, and then you say which appreciate. So who is which? What is which? So there's a little drafting help it needs, I think. But the concept is fine, but it requires better drafting. Well, I don't know if it's who. Yeah, so.
Is who acceptable or? Respond to the needs of developing countries. Respond to needs. Can we agree on 70? Yes.
Can you delete it? Does it help?
It's appropriate.
Or D would instead of and take out ITSE.
$71. We can accept 71. Okay. Julian, can we ask you if it's possible to provide the text? Mhm.
We could insert after to make better use of finite natural resources, mitigate greenhouse gas emissions, and focus on economic growth, for example.
Can we agree? I think we can. $79. Can we? Okay, I think we can agree. Can we have an agreement on this text, whether we can have or remove? Yes, Ian.
Coming back to this again, I'd actually ask if it's actually the case that we endorse the resource mobilization strategy. I think the meeting notes said we took note of one, but is there a specific document, or did we endorse a presentation, or could you just clarify? Thanks.
So the advisory board took note of the presentation and made several suggestions to refine the approach put forward by the CTCN. So we took note. Thanks. Can we agree on this as it is, or? Yes, Samuel.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I want to thank a colleague for this observation, but I'm not really sure whether, the language took note has really reflected, what we really want to see in that particular paragraph. Maybe if you want to change the language, we can say the advisory board had earlier, endorse resource mobilization strategy instead of taking note.
But we have.
And that is, we are still, if you are taking note, it's still an information. We are taking note of information, but we want it to be presented as an action here.
Do we have agreement on that? Okay, while Samuel and Oli would try to draft the language for this item, maybe we can move to the program of work because we need still time. And can we follow the program of work?
Thank you. While I think some advisory board members are in a good position to multitask, so they follow the two items in parallel. We would try to move back now to the program of work, and I would we heard an update on what the Secretariat has done yesterday, and I would maybe invite the advisory board members for a quick reaction on the progress and where they would see we could move today with this discussion.
Debbie wants to come.
Before I give you the floor, I see Spencer.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick, I think we should allow the advisory board member, the CTCN guys to work in the night because I believe they're very good at working at nights. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we should also shorten advisory board meetings to maybe half a day because we are in a very productive spirit today. So before I open the floor now on the program of work, I see some people are trying to move their flags. I briefly asked Debbie for a quick intervention.
Thank you. I just wanted to note that some of the language between the AOP and the program of work are similar. And there's one paragraph in particular, paragraph 15 of the program of work, that parallels language, or it did parallel language in paragraph 13 of the AOP. This refers to, in the AOP, it's traditional and modern technologies, whereas in this paper, it is indigenous, modern, and high technologies. So there is a need for the Secretariat to go through and make sure the language is similar. So I just wanted to highlight that for you, that we do realize that needs to be done.
We fully understand it was late night work, and sometimes all of us have experience. We work very late at night, and in the next morning the result looks slightly different from what we expected it. With this introductory words, I would now basically try to get the sense in the room about the program of work and look forward to some proposals, ideas, how we use the remaining time we have today to design the further process. Okay, I would ask for short interventions. I would we give about 10 minutes for this discussion, and then we see how we move forward. I would start with Ian, moving to Julian, and then Mette.
Thank you. I'll be brief, but commend the Secretariat for the work overnight. I think this is a very good draft. I think it's a great approach to align the text around the key themes coming out of the technology framework. I'll have to read it carefully and provide more detailed comments on the text, but thanks for the work on this overnight. And what I suggest we do is have a process for some more intersessional work, maybe have some task force calls, maybe one or even two before Poland, and then something afterwards, so we can try and finalize it after we know what the outcomes will be from Poland.
I think that's exactly the idea, because we will come back to the task forces and also see how we can really be beneficial and have a proper representation in the task force. I have Julian, followed by Mette and Claudia.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Just some quick comments. I want to echo Ian's remarks, especially I think it's a very good draft that we have now, very concise. Just some remarks. Well, we're discussing finance. I think now paragraph 39, as it is stated here, I have some difficulties with this concerning agreeing on there's a certain budget to implement the framework, technology framework. So I would refrain from putting like quantitative figures here. Second thing, in the introduction or context, where there's reference made to the implementation of national planning documents, I would like to see some, again, like reference to the NDCs and the long-term low greenhouse gas emission strategies, if that could be inserted here. And but coming back to the goals, I think that maybe we could further think about how that transformational change can really be initiated. Maybe if it can be linked to the support of other financial mechanisms, if like CTCN projects are just the basis or prepare the ground for other support which can really spur transformational change. Also, I know you had a certain an extra part on monitoring, evaluation, and reporting, but also maybe like under the goals of innovation or implementation, that could be made some reference to impacts on mitigation and adaptation. Thank you.
Thank you. I've also, in your next intervention, I also asked you for proposed ways forward. We heard this already, one idea of moving this to an intersessional/task force work. So instead of really going back into the details, maybe we also come up with some of these ideas. Mette.
Thank you very much, and also my appreciation to the Secretariat that has worked overnight. I think this is the document is much more precise and concise now. I support the structure. I think it's a good idea to use the agreed key themes from the technology framework as a basis. I also it's good that the text or the draft or the document appreciates that, of course, this need to be further developed in the negotiations, but at least the key themes is agreed on by Substa, so that's good. I also agree with my German colleague. Make that we should have some reference to the NDCs and low emission strategies up front, a little bit maybe like we did in the annual operating plan. And I support intersessional work to move the process forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Claudia?
Thank you very much, Chair. I would also like to join the appreciation for the Secretariat's work overnight. It does look much concise and precise, and I think that helps clarity of the document. So thank you very much, colleagues from the Secretariat. I support the motion of going to intersessional work. I would like to also have the opportunity for us to have the outcomes of the COP in terms of the technology framework, the periodic assessment, and also would like to suggest that we keep in mind the link with the tech work and potential joint session during the next AV and tech meetings. I think that working together as a technology mechanism will be very beneficial as we develop this midterm strategic document. In addition to the NDCs, I think it would be good to have the NAPs as a reference in the introductory part of the document. And just because I know we're not going into detail, but I would like to strongly suggest we keep paragraph 39. I think if we want to have a mechanism, it's important to highlight that this mechanism needs to be funded. And I think the figures there give an indication. Of course, it's not yet decided how the funding will come, but of course the budget and having an indication of the size of it is really critical for parties and for the CTCN in their planning procedures and also in the strategies that they need to put forward in the short and medium term. So I strongly suggest we keep this. Haven't heard at least it needs to be bracketed, but I would suggest we have it here and discuss it more intersessionally after the COP. Thank you.
So I'm just don't want to step out of my role as co-chair. Maybe just one comment on the draft, and also like to echo the positive feedback from the other advisory board members. That one element I find confusing is we're now also trying to guide the future work is a mixture of annexes and appendices. So this is maybe there could also be further simplification being useful in this very, very good document. So moving back and trying to into the role of facilitating this discussion and taking your comments, I hear that we have overall a positive. We see this as a positive move forward. We welcome the work of that the Secretariat has invested in it. We see value of moving this forward in an intersessional work / task force work, maybe a combination of both. We heard this idea of bringing also in the knowledge of the tech that we have partly already inside our group, but maybe having this also more formally represented to have these linkages in an intersessional meeting that would maybe take place after the COP. So maybe a breakdown would be of moving this into a task force setting after the COP, and then using the upcoming advisory board / tech meeting also to see what process would be useful to bring both sides on board. So this would be maybe a sequence of elements. I also understand that this is a living document, so we had comments about updates that are needed on aligning it back to the to our activities for 2019. We had some language there related to NDCs, NAPs, and we also had comments on the upcoming 1.5 report from the IPCC that might also inform our work about transformational changes. So this maybe it's also a rolling document as we have it in front of us. Maybe this is a document that we can take note of in its current form. I want to check if we can kind of accept this, not to endorse it, but use this as a basis for further process, without changing, adding to it. If we just kind of freeze it as it is, as an information document, might be the right language to use, and maybe find language that we could recognize in the minutes of the meeting to welcome the work of the Secretariat and noting the good progress on the program of work. That is a useful document to guide the future elaboration of annual plans, also to guide the work of the hosting organizations. That's also a useful tool for their work, and that we would at the same time encourage the Secretariat to continue to work on it, so taking up the changes, but also to initiate the work in task forces and intersessional works to further develop this program of work after COP24. Could we maybe try to find language that we reflect this in the minutes? Would this be a way of outlining this? Everybody would be happy with such an approach? Okay. Unfortunately, there's nothing to hammer about this. So, okay. With this, we would end the discussion on the program of work now. I think we have outlined a process. We would move back to the previous item. I would hand back to Madam Chair.
Thank you. Can we ask if all the items will have a language just to see on the screen and to agree?
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I want to thank my colleague Holly and Spencer, with whom we have put heads together to just formulate a very simple and short, sentence to replace what we have. And I'm sure Hian will also find it very acceptable. Can we go to the We came up with this sentence. A advisory board welcomes the planned engagement of a deputy director in the CTCN to lead the implementation of the resource mobilization strategy. I'll go over that again.
It should go after the text where currently we have a bracket, or after? Okay.
Before or after?
No. Starting from that. Yes, please. I'll go over that again. AB welcomes the planned engagement. Planned engagement of a deputy director in the CTCN to lead the implementation of the resource mobilization strategy. That's all. Thank you.
Can I ask you if we can agree on this? I know. It's fine. Agreed? Yeah.
I fixed this 151.
Yes, Jan.
Hey, I'm sorry, I have to go back to this again. So we noted resource mobilization strategy, and I'm not sure if it makes sense to say we're now welcoming the implementation of it through a new deputy director. So maybe if we can just try and be consistent again with the meeting notes and say that we noted a new deputy director will work to implement this strategy, something like that.
That's fine. I mean, we could live with it, although we thought it was a very good gesture to have a deputy director. So the welcoming was not the strategy. The welcoming would have been on the deputy director, specific for. But if it could be misconstrued, yes. But that was the idea.
Orly, please.
Yeah, I think maybe I understand Ian's comment, and perhaps the way around it would be, the advisory board welcomes the planned engagement of a deputy director in the CTCN to lead, we can say implementation, or another word, to lead the resource, or to focus on the resource mobilization strategy bracket, which the advisory board took note of at AB 11.
Claudia first, and then.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Samuel and Orly, for working on that language. I think I will support Canada's proposal to deal with the comments. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, maybe we try this a different way. We can stick with welcomes, as we are welcoming a new deputy director, but maybe we can just say to lead the implementation of resource mobilization and leave it there. Okay.
To delete strategy, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Full stop.
Yeah, just a slight tweak to that. I think it's missing something at the end when you say to lead implementation of resource mobilization. So perhaps we could say to lead resource mobilization efforts.
Okay. I hope it is a final version. Can we agree on this, or? Okay. So seeing no objections. Agreed. Great. So we have second and Now, we have two more agenda items, and as we agreed to have the Yungo statements, which at some point is related also to the work that we did. And then we will move to the administrative matters of the advisory board. The floor is yours. Sorry, yes, Spencer?
Just a clarification on what happens to the 2017 financial statements.
As we didn't have the agreement because there was an issue from the Norway, we decided to have the writing procedure for that.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. But do we have a time frame on this, though? Do we have a time frame on this? Because
our understanding is that it is only depending on the endorsement of the Norwegian representative of the advisory board. That indeed, that when she confirms that the Norway is satisfied with that particular issue of $300,000 transfer of money to the CTCN accounts, then the financial statement is endorsed automatically. So it is only one member endorsement, and not so that it will come back to all of you anymore.
Okay, we can go now on the other matters, and Mary Claire, the floor is yours. We are asking you to be patient.
Distinguished Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the CTCN Advisory Board, dear members and observers, I am Mary Claire Graf, speaking on behalf of Yango, the Children and Youth Constituency to the UNFCCC. I will be very brief and fast. I counted my intervention from 10 to 3 minutes, so it will be very short. I'm taking the floor to support the extension of the term of NGO representatives to the CTCN Advisory Board and to advocate for formal representation on the board for Yango. We are grateful to be here and for the observer status that had been accorded to our constituency, and we understand that this is a party-driven process, but at the same time, please know that I'm speaking on behalf of half of the world's population. The stakes in these discussions are higher for us than for anyone else at the table. Therefore, we would like to have a voice. As we meet here and deliver upon how CTCN can strengthen its network, collaborate with new partners and find fundings, and invest more in capacity building, we are here to support. Let us shift the focus to the very process and re-evaluate, are young people being given enough voice and position in supporting the role and work of CTCN? And what can young people and parties do to enhance youth engagement within CTCN? I will start with the second part of the question. So today I'm here after a year-long process of consulting in Yango and also with CTCN, and call upon parties to grant formal representation of Yango into the advisory board of CTCN. I will shortly outline 4 legal arguments to support the request. First of all, the notion of constituencies to have a board seat at CTCN is not something new. So at COP17 Doha mandated Ringo, Bingo, and Ingo to be part of the CTCN board. The important point is that COP17 was the first COP where Yango has its official status as confirmed constituency, so it was not a good time to ask for having a board seat, right? Almost a decade later now, deliveries have progressed, awareness have increased, and the quick implementation of the Paris Agreement is undeniable. We can ensure equal representation only when we actually bring children and youth to the table, in this case to the board. Point number 2, the value of participation of non-party stakeholders has been reiterated by the parties in more than 17 outcomes and decisions since the establishment of the convention. I will skip the quotes, but therefore it's paramount that progressive steps are taken towards the further inclusion of non-party stakeholder groups in UNFCCC processes, in this case the children and youth group, who represent more than half of the world's population. Thirdly, again, the principles of rights of children and the concept of intergenerational equity as well are well established in the preamble of the Paris Agreement. Hence, this request from Yango comes a part of delivering upon what party promised us. As well, we were really engaged in the Action for Climate Empowerment draft decision at SB 48 and the outcome of the Youth Forum, which just took place before SB 48, is now implemented in the Paris Agreement. So you can see that work or recommendations from youth can be taken in consideration, and therefore we request that this process also is be adopted to the CTCN as well. Now, after the legal arguments, a brief insight into what, and mostly important, how Yango can help in the CTCN processes and bring diverse perspectives to the table. Relating specifically on the work of CTCN, the network, we guess it's really important because Yango, while being a constituency to the UNFCCC processes, has its operation and activity spread into over 200 youth-led NGOs and over 3,500 individuals, several of which work on or around the focus areas of CTCN and thereby can act as the institutionalized channel and resources for youth inputs on the progress and work of CTCN. We can contribute with local and global knowledge and expertise and can raise awareness since we have a strong global network. What is associated further is the substantive aspect of it. Youth, being a target group, through the implementation of the Paris Agreement, will have their socio-economic well-being and job prospects affected by the evolution of technology and especially climate-friendly technologies. Youth play an important role as entrepreneurs and in the startup scene and in the development of new and innovative technologies and are crucial in driving technology adoption and change by building up new sectors representing huge employment potential. Yango, as the formal constituency, can be the needed avenue for feeding such inputs in a facilitated manner, ensuring demographic representation. Furthermore, we can establish connections with partners from youth, climate, technology, entrepreneurship. Lastly, we will support CTCN with our active participation and inputs from a youth perspective and representing the new generation, also known as the digital natives. We could also enable CTCN to access new funding possibilities. Distinguished delegates, we want to envision a future where no one is left behind, addressing climate change, compassion, human rights, social justice, and long-term economic prosperity. Therefore, I ask on behalf of my constituency, I would like to request that parties represented here please raise their flags and support that Yango has a board seat at the CTCN as an agenda item and finally bring this conclusion and deliver it at the COP24. It's very important to us, and we spend a lot of time for preparing this. So we would be extremely grateful for your support, ladies and gentlemen. Yango is here to contribute, to work, and to support parties and CTCN. This year is the year of the implementation, and Yango is keen on continuing the engagement with CTCN, parties, and other stakeholders during the development of the Paris Agreement Working Programme, and also continuing our work with on youth empowerment and ensure the Paris Agreement will reach its full potential. Please hear our demands, and I speak for Yango, children and youth all around the world and the future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your intervention, and as we know, it will be reflected definitely in the minutes of the meeting, so that probably we are aware that having the seat in the board should be decided at the COP. Which we hope that countries can take it on the board. Thank you. If there are, yes, Orly, please.
Hi, I'd just like to respond and thank you for the intervention. It is difficult for smaller groups or groups on the sidelines to have a. Oh, sorry. I just want to thank you for the intervention. I think it's important to hear from everybody here, and it's important to have strong statements from everybody. So really, we take note of this, or at least, and appreciate the time that you took to prepare your statement.
Thank you.
Thank you. Claudia, please.
Thanks, Chair. And I want to echo Orly's comments, welcoming the participation of Jungo. Of course, we know this is to be decided by the COP, but we also welcome their interventions, and there is always moments where observers are welcome to participate, so we very much encourage that all observers participate, and particularly Jungo. We do value very much their input to this process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claudia. Matthew.
Thank you. Just also to reiterate, firstly, the thanks for coming and attending the meeting, and secondly, for the intervention that you've made. It is important that all voices are heard and given the opportunity. It's the nature and the mandate of the UN to listen to them all. And I hope what you request, when you make it, it's brought to the COP, and I hope they listen the same way we're listening here. Thank you.
If I can also open the floor for other observers who might wish to come for the intervention. I don't see the flags. We have the last agenda item about the administrative matters, and I give the floor to Karsten for handling that.
Thank you. I will try and under strict control of the Secretariat here. I think there are 3 items that are outlined. First is and maybe the key items to discuss on task force and intersessional work. When we discussed the program of work, we agreed on the process. We've established task forces in the past, and we should see how maybe there's a reflection from your side how to continue on them, how easy it was for you to participate in the task force, and maybe outlining on what we should focus on the task force, as we are already behind after 1 o'clock. Maybe one proposal from the chairs would be to focus the task force work now on the program of work, to have this as a key item. We've done in the past a process of nominating colleagues for one task force, the other, or for both. As if you would agree, we just move forward with one task force, we can maybe invite all advisory board members to be permanent members of the task force, and invite the secretariat to call for first task force meeting after COP24, after we have the guidance available. As a proposal, I'm open to other proposals, but this might be a simplified way forward. Spencer.
Thank you, Chair. I think we have to be practical on the task forces. In my view, the larger the task force is, the less work gets done because of the intersessional nature. If it's not done face-to-face, it's done electronically. It's very difficult to have 20 people in that forum to do specific things like drafting. So I think we may need to have smaller groups, concentrated efforts on the work program. Of course, they could have a situation where the wider group will look at everything, but I think there must be some dedicated resources, in a way, a few people, 3, 4, 5, just to bring the document to a certain level when it can then be discussed on the wider level. So I think we may want to look at not just having one large task force and one large electronic meeting, because that may not help.
Okay, point taken. Sumya?
I think I welcome this suggestion that meeting of the task force be convened at the COP towards the second week, maybe if people have time, because the second week seems to be very busy, the high-level meetings. And also, it will be beneficial if the Secretariat can put out within the program of work some key areas that the task force needs to give their input to, because that can be easily done by electronic means, either email or webinar or anything, and that will help. But with that input, can we have that task force meeting somewhere in the COP? But that needs to be arranged that previously, because many of the people might not stay for 2 weeks. So that's also a question. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe a short reflection. Not necessarily all advisory board members are available at the COP, and some of them are also charged with, for instance, with negotiation tasks or facilitation tasks. So maybe it's a good way of continuing the discussion. I take Spencer's point of it's not easy to have a phone conference with 20 people. On the other hand, it's also important to ensure involvement. What I would suggest for the first task force, we could maybe present a program of work, how to break down the discussion on the program of work into smaller packages, so that we can maybe have a more informed discussion, for instance, on priority setting, on stakeholder outreach, on resource mobilization within the task force, but still keep it open for a larger group of advisory board members. From attending several task forces in different configurations, I've sometimes seen that commitment to have balanced discussion among advisory board members was not really easy in this telephone conferences. So the proposal here would be to maybe kick off the process directly after the COP and with a larger setting, and then present, maybe with the help of the Secretariat, a program how to break this into smaller configurations. Okay, I'll briefly move to the easy one, the date of the next meeting. So the proposed the proposed date, the venue will be Copenhagen. This is the proposal to the advisory board, and also to do it in combination with the technology executive meeting. The 18th meeting is scheduled for the 26th to 29th of March, and the proposed date for the CTCN advisory board meeting would be the 20th to the 22nd of March in Copenhagen. Okay, sorry, I get online guidance. Maybe Jukka, you want to inform?
Yes, indeed. Last week, when the Technology Executive Committee was discussing this, they actually came up with a kind of idea and opportunity that it would be good that the bodies would meet. After so important meeting, at least it's anticipated that Katowice COP will decide on new technology framework, as well as decide the elements of the periodic assessment, which both affect us as a technology mechanism. So they came up with the idea that they would be looking for joint dialogue for at least one day, and that would be then organized in such a way that TEC would meet in the first 2 days of the week, and then the advisory board the last 2 days of the week, and then the middle, that means the Wednesday, would be spent on a strategic dialogue between the representatives of the AB as well as TEC. And therefore the proposal is actually the week 18th to 22nd of March. And we would try to organize one is here and Bert, so that in such a way that the TEC Secretariat could facilitate the TEC members to come to Copenhagen, to the United Nations city in Copenhagen, and we would host that meeting. TEC first having indeed the 2 days on their own, and then we would have a joint, and then we continue with the AB. That entails that because the time schedule is so tight within a week, that the meetings have to start in the morning of Monday, early, or not in the midday, but in the morning. And indeed, AB meeting would continue Friday late afternoon, because we need 2 full days, I think, both bodies. Otherwise, we can't make our business. So that's what I understood from the bodies.
Okay, this is accepted by the advisory board members, so we can agree. Before the chair of the advisory board will close the meeting, I would like to hand over the floor to Philippe Scholtes from the managing director of UNIDO to address the advisory board.
Thank you very much. And it's my pleasure here on behalf of UNIDO to meet with all of you very briefly, though, and to help you bring somehow this exhaustive set of discussions to a close, hopefully. I understand that you've been working for quite intensively for the last few days. I take it that the fact that this closing ceremony has been delayed somewhat, that it's a good sign in a sense that you had a lot of interesting things to discuss, and that you did spend a fair amount of time in trying to come to a robust agreement that would, and a consensus that brings everybody around the table. That is what they call here the spirit of the Vienna consensus. And we hope that it has prevailed also upon your discussions during the last couple of days to bring all this into a sensible agreement on the way forward. I understand it's the second time that we host the advisory board of CTCN here. And on behalf of UNIDO, I would like to extend a standing invitation, of course, for you to consider Vienna as a place when you want to meet and have this. If you have appreciated and found the facilities convenient and useful, please consider that this is your home and you can come. You're welcome to come anytime to have your deliberations in our premises here in Vienna. I would say that CTCN and the climate technology agenda in general is quite an important part of our activities here at UNIDO. we went recently through quite a detailed exercise to look at the portfolio of technical assistance initiatives that we have at this point. We are running a portfolio of about 830 projects in about 100 countries at this point in time. And because of the kind of robust systems that we have in place, we have a clear indication of how each one of these 830 projects fits into the bigger picture of Agenda 2030, so that we can report to our member states how we contribute somehow to the Sustainable Development Goals. And we have a taxonomy that is somewhat different from the SDGs because it predates the SDGs, but we could establish nonetheless a fairly straightforward and robust mapping from one to the other. And by that measure, we have now almost real-time actually, indication of how the resources distributed or provided by UNIDO in its technical assistance initiatives translates into the language of the Agenda 2030 and the SDGs. And you would be happy to see that, of course, UNIDO's mandate being about industry and inclusive and sustainable industrial development, the bulk of our resources is spent on SDG number 9 on industry, infrastructure and innovation. About 42% of our resources is spent on that SDG alone. But then we saw that we had by far the largest as number 2 and number 3 in the priorities of UNIDO come the SDG 13 on climate action, where we spent about 1/5 of our resources, and SDG 7 on sustainable and affordable energy for all. So it's quite important, I believe, that to see that the importance of the energy agenda and clean energy and climate-friendly energy technology plays in the life of UNIDO on a regular basis. So we feel that as CTCN belongs and can be even more closely, more deeply embedded in the day-to-day technical operations of UNIDO. As a matter of fact, I had a couple of months ago a meeting with Mrs. Espinosa. We happened to be on mission at the same place at the same time, and she wanted to discuss with me and share with me the impressions that she had after attending the Vienna Energy Forum that we had conducted earlier this year, and where we had tried to showcase some of the platforms that we have and that we are co-hosting in that case with our friends at UN Environment, that is the CTCN, and other platforms such as the Global Network of Sustainable Energy Centers or the Global Clean Tech initiative, for instance, that has a strong focus on climate-friendly technologies as well. And Mrs. Spinoza had somehow seen all this by herself, and she felt that somehow that kind of was giving us an outreach that neatly complemented the more political and outreach of the UNFCCC. And she was encouraging some closer cooperation so that through our networks, through the capacities, through, again, the bulk of these 830 projects and the way is also in the energy space, that we should help somehow help the UNFCCC carry out its agenda towards the Paris Agreement and climate-free technologies, climate-friendly technologies. And as we know that SDG, the climate action and SDG 7 and SDG 13 are somewhat lagging behind in terms of the timeline towards 2030. And certainly we need to put on place all the resources at our disposals to try to accelerate the momentum. And on the side of UNIDO, we stand ready, of course, to provide even stronger support substantively to the CTCN to help Yuka and his team to implement this agenda. At the same time, I think we also, and I think it's not the first time that I make this offer as well, that because of the diversity and the span of our technical assistance initiatives, we have put in place fairly robust enterprise resource planning systems and fairly robust mechanism procedures to make sure that we comply with international fiduciary standards when it comes to the implementation of our technical assistance resources. You must know that we are managing at this point $1.4 billion or so of technical assistance resources that is entirely grant-funded technical assistance, that is entirely voluntary contributions by a large number of member states and multilateral funds. And we have obviously an obligation between them, vis-à-vis them, to ensure that their funds are used in a best possible way. And so it's another type of offer that I'm happy to make to the management of CTCN and to you as the advisory board, that we would be happy, of course, to put our systems and procedures and whatever management capacities that we have here in Vienna at the disposal of the CTCN, if that can be of assistance to you. So with this, again, I would like to thank you for your hard work during these last few days. I hope that you have enjoyed your stay in Vienna. And I reiterate the invitation, the standing invitation for you to consider Vienna as your home for the next and subsequent meetings of the advisory board. Thank you very much.
Thank you for framing our work, for linking the work of UNIDO with our activities here. Before I move the floor to our chair to close the meeting, we would give the floor to Wana from the Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair, and I would like to express our appreciation to UNIDO as a host. We feel warmly welcome every time we come here. I enjoy very much your UN canteen. You are much better than Bonn, and this is something we have to learn how to improve our work. And I see a lot of activity happen in this building that is very impressive, the health day and the club and all those things. And also thank UNEP for taking a lot of work and support the implementation task force. Thank the Australian government, who are led by our friend Elfie and her minister, that really support us. I'm glad to be here. And in fact, I would like to congratulate very much for the productive meeting and the positive thinking and working environment and friendship that all the AB has demonstrated throughout the meeting. Only this friendship that make the technology negotiator or party are very special. And we are so special, more than others, and I really like to work with you here. It's already 5 years. It's just amazing. We just set up this mechanism a while ago in Cancun, and Yuka was there when we negotiated this. And we have completed successfully the first 5-year work program. And thanks to all donors to make it possible for helping to have this mechanism getting up and run in a very short notice. We have demonstrated that it's possible if we really want. This is the party-owned mechanism. You create it yourself in Vienna. You walk through all the TOR, the composition, everything is come from your brain and your thinking together as a team. So this mechanism, you can only continue with your guidance, with your support, because it's your mechanism. It's not only Secretariat or UNEP or UNIDO or other, it's your mechanism. So also thanks to all recipient country for your trust to use the service of CTCN, to the trust of the team of UNEP and UNIDO to help you to take action on the ground. There are many other services that you can go to, but you choose to come to CTCN. That really is something that really impressed all the support team and staff. I'm sure that they're very grateful to you to consider that they are ready to help you, and I encourage more to come for the next year. As we move to the next journey after we finish the first 5 years, I'm very impressed that you are really dedicated. You're thinking about what is the next road that you're going to go. And I'm sure that there are more additional guidance will come in Katowice. And there are a lot of expectation also that come with it for our support and delivery. And we must be ready for that. And I'm very glad to hear that there are a lot more contribution coming in, because they believe that, but I feel like the scale of 10 million is still very low in my view. And in fact, if you look compared to the thing that you can do much more, but it only come more if we can really prove that our mechanism is really functioning and on track. I'm sure that we will be in that direction. And with this conclusion, I'd like to Thank you all. Once again, I take that invitation seriously from UNIDO. We look forward to coming back here in whatever form and opportunity. We really like to be here. And for Yuka invitation also for the tech to come to Copenhagen, he already made a lot of offer to me. I feel personally very convincing, but I have to look into my pocket first. We are very poor, but I'm looking, if it's possible, I really want to make an effort to come and together with Claudio as a tech chair and also Dinara just left, we'll make it possible that we want to have the two mechanisms in the joint location back to back, because after Katowice, there are a lot of joint mandate. The only way that you can make it in a very effective way is to coordinate and make sure that you complement each other in a various way. That's only possible if you are in the same meeting room. We are looking for that opportunity. So thanks to all. Have a safe trip back home and see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will close my meeting with several words, and I have to say, I will have to say many thanks to everyone. But I will start from the board members, from all of you. I really thank you for being such an active participants, and you made this board meeting very interesting to follow. As we had quite an extensive and interesting discussions for within these 2 days, especially today at the end, around a number of activities and number of decisions. As it was my first board meeting at the CTCN, at some point I was still observing, and I was really excited how you as one board acting together to find the solutions and the common ground, and it's really appreciable. And I'm very happy to have an opportunity to be part of this family and part of you. I want to thank also Wana and Bert from the UNFCCC. It's very important for us to have you with us, and thank you for finding the time to be on the full board meeting. It's really very exciting. I want to thank the observers and network members and country NDEs. It is very important for us to have you, because we all together, we are the CTCN. Webcast followers, of course, it's very important, and I know that there are quite many followers that were following us during the webcasting. Thank for the engineers up there. I want to thank very much the UNIDO for hosting, and Mr. Scholters for being very supportive and for inviting us for the further board meetings. I want to thank Tarek and your team. Thank you for being a wonderful guest hosts. I want to thank the UN Environment and Mark. Thank you for co-hosting and for being very helpful in guiding us in the number of directions during the discussions within these 2 days. Austrian government, of course, thanks again for hosting us. I want to very much thank my vice chair, Karsten. It is very good to know that you are in the very experienced and safe hands, and I was not worried to make even the mistakes. I was sure that Karsten would handle it. And I was saying that we are a tall chairs team, so I think we handled this meeting because we had the main decisions taken. I'm sure that we can work further, though as I know it is the last board meeting for the Karsten, so I want to wish you all the best and luck with further work. I want to thank, of course, the CTCN team with the great work that you did within the last 2 days. I know that it's extremely hard to have such a tight schedule and to reflect all the revisions, the comments, and everything that we requested within the documents for within these 2 days. And I also want to thank Scott very much for being very supportive, because in responding to all the questions and all hundreds of requests from my side, at some point I was even tired from myself. I can imagine how was your feeling. And finally, of course, I want to thank Yuka. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your dedication to the CTCN within this 5 years, because we all know that these first 5 years are very critical for entities like this. And as Matthew mentioned, the CTCN from childhood is becoming the toddler. So I understand that it's not easy to grow up as a baby for 5 years and then to give it to someone and to hope to keep it in the same path. I really hope that your successor will feel the same ownership and will have the same dedication. And yeah, thank you again. And if I don't miss anyone, with this in mind, I want to close the meeting, and I'm looking forward to work further with you with the next board meetings and also in between the meetings. So, thank you. Today.
Yeah.
Of course. The most loud.